play football. 5 boys and girls play basketball. That makes 27% of the student body. 435 non-revenue sports. It gives the young people athletic experience. They've had facility upgrades, and I'm going to introduce David and let him introduce his 2 coaches when that time comes. So we're so glad you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Early, for having me back. Yeah, last time I was here, I had the pleasure of talking about sort of the facility upgrades. We got to talk a little bit about our new turf going into our opening game against Shelby County, which we did win. For those of you who are old school and remember the old rivalry, we beat them on a block in the last minute of the game. So that was a really nice way to open the stadium. We had fireworks, community tailgate. They got rained out the first night, so we had to come back and do it again the next night. But we managed to pull it off. It was really a great experience, great atmosphere for the community at large. And when Mr. Early reached out to me, he asked, he said, a lot of people had questions about non-revenue sports. So I had to verify. You mean everything but basketball and football? Because, you know, as an athletic director, I often get accused of only caring about basketball and football. And while they do generate a lot of the income, and I know Coach Ross is looking at me going, well, soccer's a revenue sport, but, you know, depends on who we're playing. Sometimes we play Shelby County, we don't get too much to gain from the visiting team, but, you know, if we're playing South or North, it's a revenue sport. But, you know, the thing about it is we understand that the basketball and football, the success of those programs, a lot of times dictate the culture of the community. They get people involved. You can tell the attitude of the students in the hallway, just kind of the overall spirit. But I kind of want to focus on that 73% of athletes who don't play non-revenue or who don't play basketball and football. If I only came to work and served 150 or 175 out of 600 athletes, I would not be doing my job. I was a non-revenue sport athlete. I played a little bit of basketball, although I was pretty far down on the bench when I played. But most of my career was running cross country and track from high school all the way through college and then coaching for 20 years. I know how big it is to have community support. If you go to our social media pages, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you follow, we are very deliberate about making sure that we promote all the success of our athletes. We're very deliberate about making sure that everyone's accomplishments are recognized, because whether you have 5,000 people at a game cheering for you, or whether you are on the golf course and have 50 people cheering for you, that's still your sport, your livelihood. That's your high school experience. And I don't want any of our athletes to ever leave Oldham County High School feeling like their experience was less than a football player or a basketball player, because they all work just as hard. Okay. When I coached, I used to tell my athletes, whether they are a 16-minute runner, a 15-minute runner, or a 20-minute runner, you're working just as hard. It's just as hard for you. You're going through just as much pain and discomfort. So whether it be one of those 73% of our athletes, that's 435 athletes, whether it be the band or choir kid, they're all putting in hours. They're all doing stuff above and beyond the school days. So it absolutely is our responsibility to recognize them. And we've got some very successful athletic programs. That's, you know, we have very good coachable kids and we have a lot of success. One of the things, yeah, you can see one of the things I talked to you guys about last time was being very deliberate about recognizing our success. When people come to Oldham County High School, whether it's in the gym, whether it's on one of those fields, we want everyone to know how successful we are within the 8th region, and how successful we are at the state level. So I just went through, and I didn't want to list every regional championship that everybody has, because at some point you start droning on, but I just kind of went through the last couple of years. And I just want to highlight some of the successes that our non-revenue sports have had. So we have won team championships, and I went back to the beginning of last school year, so the 22-23 school year. So our cheer team has won 2 regional championships in that time. Volleyball won a championship this year at Eminence. As we scroll through, I don't have this on time, but as we scroll through, you'll see some of these teams' successes and some of the banners. Wrestling has won 2 championships in that time. Golf won a championship against, and this was an awesome one because we beat St. X and Trinity, and I love doing that. And I think we beat them on the last hole, if I'm not mistaken. It was actually a shootout. So golf has won a championship. They had a golfer this year finish second state, all state. Softball has won a championship. Track has won 2 championships in that time. In that time, we have also had 8 athletes at Oldham County High School who were all state, first or second team. That's huge. And we've had 2 athletes who were regional player of the year. So to just look at basketball and football and say, well, that's how you define. And I don't want you to feel like I'm up here preaching regional championships. We all love them. The community takes pride in them. The families, the athletes take pride in them. But winning is fun. And that does contribute to this, to the experience of the athletes. I didn't go into listing the number of teams that were regional runner-up because nobody wants that trophy anyhow. I always say that's the trophy you take out for target practice because you didn't get to go to state. But the teams that don't win are competitive. They're competitive because not just because of the support we give. We have great coaches in place. We have coaches who care and are passionate about their sport, and we owe it to them to support that and continue to foster that. So I've got 2 coaches who I thought have had the most success. Why not let you guys hear from them? Coach Thomas is here. I don't have what year you started. I'm sure that's in your 04. Since I have been here, we've had 8 straight state finishes where we've been on the podium and taken home hardware. 3 of those being state championships, 3 in a row, which is really nice. Private schools again, the University of Manual, and then the other private schools. And then Coach Reardon, who in his time here has won 12 regional championships, and in 2016 was the state duals champion. So these are not the only 2 coaches who've had success, but I think, you know, when people look at Oldham County High School, a lot of times they see those basketball banners, and we are still the school in the region with the most boys and girls regional championships. But, you know, people forget that there's 12 wrestling years hanging in the gym. There's, I think, 8 cross-country years hanging in the gym, plus, 6, 7 state championships. So, he's retired still.
Cross country coach.
Yeah. Well, you're just partial. So.
I am completely partial.
I'll let Coach Thomas talk for a little bit, and then we'll bring Coach Riggin up. Thank you so much for having me back.
All right, Max, great to be here today. So just starting off with a little bit, I'm a retired teacher. I taught in Oldham County for 29 years, first year in Shelby County. Let's see, 15 years at Centerfield Elementary and 14 at Locust Grove, a little more than 14. I had to get to a certain date to retire. So right now I'm doing some substitute teaching, and thankfully continue coaching. So it's great to year of coaching without all the responsibilities of teaching. So that's been a really nice year. Before I get started, I'd say anytime I get a chance to speak, you know, I always give glory to God for putting me in this position. And, you know, I ask him each and every day to guide me as a coach on my team. So anything I've done successfully goes to him first. I have a great AD to work for, had several, been with Dave the last several years, and he's very supportive of cross country, and appreciate him. Great admin we work under, have all these years. Let's see, have great support from assistant coaches, and then parents and runners, and it's been to work under, you're not going to get very far. So it's definitely a big, a lot of things include to make a successful program, much more than just a coach. Let's see, I've been at coaching at OC for 20 years. And first I want to start though, just a little bit about cross country, because I've already been asked a few questions in here today that people aren't super familiar with how cross country works. Some of you are, but some of you aren't. So I'm just going to run through a few things that makes it kind of unique. Cross country is scored by adding up the top 5 runners on a team, and the lowest points win. So it's kind of like golf. So you want your runners up towards the front to get less points.
let's see, once a race starts, here's something that's different about cross country. Once the gun goes off, there are no timeouts. There's no breaks. There's no huddling up with a coach. You know, I could yell at.
Other thing about cross country and track and football, baseball, basketball, soccer, you're on a consistent field or a consistent court every time you play. Football field, soccer field, everything's going to be the same. Maybe the turf a little bit different, but cross country, you never know, especially if you haven't been to the course before, you don't know what you're getting into. And a lot of times the course itself can be more intimidating than the runners you're running against, based on the hills and the mud and the, you know, all the things that you have to deal with. So that's something that's unusual. Let's see. One other thing that makes it real unique is every athlete, regardless of talent, gets to participate. Okay. Nobody sits the bench and gets a little bit of playing time or no playing time. Every runner on the team, as long as they're not injured, gets to participate and be a part of the event, and they run the race. So one thing that makes it unique when they finish up, you know, we could have a runner that wins the race that went through the exact same experience as a runner who maybe finished at the back of the pack. They were both hurting, they both pushed it, they can both talk about, man, that hill was a killer, or man, it was so hot today, or whatever. So, you know, there's no stars, no quarterback, there's no running back, there's no point guard. It's just, so I think that allows kids to bond in a much different way than most other sports. Okay. So I started my cross-country coaching at Centerfield. I coached over there for 5 years under Paul Upchurch was my principal there, and he let me start a program. Great guy. Also a former cross-country coach that won 3 state championships at Oldham County High School back in the 80s. Let's see, I moved to, after my 5 years there, Pam Hazelton, Blake's wife, I get a call from her one night, and she talked me into coming over to the high school, which I had no intent, didn't want to do it, but she was very persuasive, and I said, all right, I'll give it a try. And 20 years later, I'm still loving it. And she was a great assistant coach for me for many, many years. Let's see.
Had to choose, it would be a tough choice. I love coaching both. That's what I started doing at Centerfield. And that's why I was glad to get to keep doing it. I've coached many runners that I taught in elementary school or coached back at Centerfield back in the day. So it's cool to reconnect with families. I have several teams on the kid right now, on the kids on the team right now that I coached at Locust Grove. So that's always fun. But starting with our guys, they have been a consistent top 10 program just about every year. Every now and then we'll have a year where we're not top 10. So looking at them, you know, a top 10 team consistently, you would say that's pretty solid, and that's a good team to have, a top 10 team. The only thing is they're with our girls, and you know, when you're comparing that to the girls.
Recording in progress.
Just the running, it's just the, you know,
It's fun. I
played basketball in high school too. It's a lot more fun to play basketball than it is run a cross country race, you know, especially that last mile. So we have to do some things to make it fun for them, and we do that. But it requires hard work, it requires perseverance, and it requires a willingness to accept and push through pain. You know, to be a good runner, you just have to do that. And once kids do this over and over and over,
changes kind of who they are and
their personalities and what they're willing to do. So I think that's why
when kids get comfortable being uncomfortable,
that success and that FS and that
it takes to do
that, you start to see that come out in other areas of their area.
and that's why I feel like that cross
Country team, both the boys and the girls teams, are consistently in the running every year. Sometimes they win, sometimes they might be second, but for highest GPA, team GPA,
Cross country.
boys and girls is up there every year, up there and we're winning that. And let's see, we have many cross-country runners in leadership positions throughout the school, student government, FCA, teacher assistants, and many other organizations that you'll find them being a part of. So, you know, it helps them individually, it helps us as a team, but it also flows back into OCHS and brings a lot of positive benefits back to the school, so, and the community there. So thank you. And I had no idea I would see so many people out here today. Off Sheriff Sparrow used to be my DARE officer back at Centerfield. Of course, I've you know, worked under Blake and Brent, and you know,
How many meets are there in the season?
usually the kids that run region and state get up to about 9 or 10, and then most of the other kids will get in about 8.
You say they're not familiar at all with the.
Well, it depends. If they're an experienced runner and they've been there before.
They have, but sometimes we'll go to a new course that they've never been to. Now we have a home meet every year out here, Haunted Woods. Some of you guys may have heard of that. If you've never been to it, you know, you may have never seen a cross country race. Love for you to come by Haunted Woods. We have thousands and thousands of runners that come to that, and it brings us in a huge amount of money for our sport. And it's kind of like a festival, you know, atmosphere. The woods are decorated up for Halloween, and it's just a great event on it's usually the first Saturday of October. So if you ever want to come see a cross country race, that's a great one to come to, and it's right here on our campus. Mm-hmm. Yes, that has happened. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Okay. But anyway, that's any other questions? If not, that's all I've got today. So yes.
A lot of the kids practice, they don't. So I think that says a lot about your program. Also, your alumni, I see them at one together, they're in college.
Yeah. That's one thing. We have had so many friendships that developed on the team that are still friends in adulthood. We've even had, I think, 3 different marriages happen from kids that ran for cross country, boys and girls that, you know, ended up married. So yeah, it's great community and bonding. So I'm honored to be coaching. I'm glad they still let me do it after all these years. And you know, I don't know, I retired from teaching, but right now I don't have any initial thoughts on when I would retire from coaching, because I still love doing it, and we'll just take that 1 year at a time. But all right, thank you guys for being here today.
All right. Well, I'm not retired, so I didn't prepare any notes or have much time to do that. But I do recognize a lot of faces in here. I'm Coach Reardon, Aaron Reardon. I've got 3 brothers. All 4 of us are raised in Golden County, grew up here. The last Rotary luncheon that I had attended was my senior year in high school. I won a state title, and Dave Weedman came and pulled me out of class, asked me if I was hungry. And of course I said yes. And he said, well, come on. And he threw me in the car, and we drove down here to the John Black Center, and he introduced me and had lunch, and I got to speak to. I'm glad to be back here today. So thank you for inviting me. A little bit of wrestling. So I tell our parents every year at our parent meeting at the beginning of the season, wrestling is one of those sports that it's difficult to fall in love with, but when you do, you're hooked. Our kids say it's like the mafia. Once you get in, you never really get out. My mom tells me all the time, when me and my brothers all started having kids, she said, you know, being a parent you never really stop. It's from the cradle to the grave. And I think about that sometimes as a coach, and I feel like in a lot of ways, being a coach is not that different. And I saw this on this sign right here, service above self. I think that's very, very powerful. It's a big reason why guys like Coach Thomas and I do what we do. It is great to win. We want to win, but we also want to be a positive influence in the lives of children. And I feel like with wrestling, we've definitely been able to do that. So I'm very blessed. Just a little bit speaking about impact on community and things like that. So I had a kidney stone. Came down to wrestling practice. My brother Josh, he's our middle school coach, and he could tell something wasn't right with me. I was laying down on the mat, stretching, thought I had pulled something in my back, and he was watching me. He said, "Dude, you're having a kidney stone. You need to leave and go to the ER." So I made it to the Grange, got checked in, go back to the ER. The charge nurse was a former wrestler of mine. He said, "Come on, coach, we'll take care of you." Got me back in a bed. I don't even remember the rest of it. Left. It was literally, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 days later, I had a cracked wisdom tooth. Wife makes me the appointment. I go see the dentist. It's Dr. Burns' son, Zach, also a wrestler of mine. He yanked that sucker out and patted me on the butt and said, "You're good to go." Went to the pharmacy. The pharmacist, former wrestler, the cashier when I was checking out, former student, the young lady behind me with a baby on her hip, former student. All of that happened within like, I don't remember, like 48 to 60 hours. And it was one of those points in my life where I had that, everybody kind of gets to that point. Am I doing what God intended me to do? And I had that moment that day, and it was very powerful. And I get emotional talking about things like that, so please forgive me. But with wrestling, back to what I was saying, cradle to the grave. So we have this youth program, and these pamphlets that are at your table, these flyers, you can scan any one of those QR codes and you can learn more about our programs. But with our wrestlers, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, I meet them when they're about this tall. And like I've got kids on my team right now that I look up to when I coach them. So it's been a very powerful thing in my life, and I hope it's been the same for them. But it's one of those things where the outcome of all of that is more than just regional titles. It's more than just winning, which we've been blessed to do a lot of. But I really think that those things, especially in our community where we have so much support, those things are byproducts of what we're really after, which is to build those relationships with kids. So we've been able to do that. So our wrestling program, like I said, we get kids, we try to hook them early with our Little Colonels program. We have about 80 kids in that right now. We have about 20 assistant coaches. We'll probably retain somewhere between 70 to 80% of those little wrestlers, and then we'll bring in a new wave in behind them, and many of them will move into middle school and then eventually high school. So by the time a kid gets up to the high school level, me and my staff have been coaching them for maybe 8 or 10 years at that point. So I think that's a big reason for our success, is just the way our program's structured and the relationships that we get to build along the way. As far as the impact in community, like I said, a lot of those people I was talking to you about, the dentist, the charge nurse, it's just a couple examples. But I tell people all the time, especially my wrestlers, wrestling's never the most important thing in your life, and it never should be. But I do believe that, especially for young people, it could be the most important thing that helps them get to where they want to be. And it's a tool to get them there. It teaches them the value of hard work, teaches them discipline, work ethic, and like I said, the outcome of that is very productive members of society who get their hand raised a lot at wrestling matches. But that's a little bit about our program. Like I said, I didn't have a ton of time to prepare today, but I would appreciate it if you guys would ask questions. So I know that there are lots of people in here that have probably never seen a wrestling match. Yeah. So the young lady you saw right there, that's Tatum. Literally knew her since she was this big. Tatum she's going for her third straight women's state title this year. She won it as an 8th grader. She won it last year as a freshman, and so far she's undefeated on the women's side this year. We had another female wrestler that came out this season, Lucy, and she's doing great, learning a lot, but I do see it growing across the state. And just I think the Coaches Association started offering a women's wrestling championship within the last 5 years. And just that 5 years, the KHSA has since sanctioned it. And the numbers have exploded since then. So I do think at some point it will take off here in Oldham County, which is going to present a whole lot of obstacles, but they're obstacles they're battles that will be worth fighting. But it's growing, and Tatum's one, she gets in there, she practices with us every day. She's in a room full of smelly boys, and she gives as well as she gets. She's tough. She's tough as nails.
Wrestle against the boys at her weight class?
She prefers to. She says it makes her tougher. So, but like I said, she's fun to watch. I wish I had some video of her, but she gets out there and gets after it. So. Yeah. So she started the same time her brother started, which her brother is Tristan. Tristan is he's a top-ranked wrestler in the state right now. He's a senior. But they both came out. I think Tristan was in the 3rd grade at the time. Tatum was in kindergarten, and they came out to our youth program and fell in love with it. And they've both been doing it ever since. Yeah. Yes, sir.
In your career, coaching and actually your state championship, was Woodford County one of the main challenges?
It's an excellent question. They were in the beginning. It's not much of a challenge anymore.
Okay.
So we kind of took off, and I'm guessing you're familiar with the history with Woodford County, the Carr family. Yeah, well, Coach Carr he's a great human being, but he retired, and the program there had they haven't fallen apart, but they're just not what they used to be. But the other flip side of that story is we're not what we used to be either. When I first took over, it was like a lot of high school wrestling teams. I think we might have had 8 or 10 guys on the team at the time when I first started coaching the high school team. And like right now, our high school roster is probably around 60 kids. So our wrestling room down there, on if it's a night where we have youth practice, we'll have the high school team, which is somewhere between 50 and 60 kids, the middle school team, which is around 40. They practice facility.
Everyone's coming in behind and that's 80 kids, so any given night coaching. It is a lot of kids. It's a lot of kids. And the cool thing too has been
As tough as wrestling is, and as much as we demand out of them, they stick with it. You know, it's been really fun. It's been something that I can see the impact in with these young kids. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Stay up here.
all right.
So, we thank these coaches for coming in and telling the stories. It's great to hear about,